Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today I decided to bring this video where I'm going to be showing you guys how to build a full React application, which is basically going to serve as a personal portfolio for anyone who wants to have a portfolio displaying like your projects, your experience, and everything that you've done so far. And I think this video will serve more for kind of teaching the basics of React and teaching how to actually start creating websites in React. But if you are interested in using the code that I used in this video, you can use it as your portfolio. I don't care. All the code will be in the description, so you can just check it out. So here's a little demo of what we're going to be building. And in the video, I'm not actually going to show myself writing any of the CSS because I don't feel like that will be the most valuable use of my time in this video. I feel like if I were to spend all of this time teaching this, I should focus on the actual React aspect of it. CSS is something that most of the time a React developer don't really have to do it on their own. There's many libraries out there, so if you want to check it out, you can just use the CSS I have already created, but I'm not going to show myself writing the CSS. So basically, you can see the website looks like this. We have a home page over here, a bunch of links. You can click on them. It has a little title, little description of yourself. You can add more if you want to. It's totally customizable. But as you go down, you see the little skill session. Here you could put all the different skills you want. I would recommend writing keywords just like this because it is compatible with like whenever someone is looking for a specific skill set, they don't want to spend a lot of time. So when they see immediately, React or Angular or whatever, then they'll know immediately that like they won't have to spend a lot of time searching exactly which skills you have. They can just see everything laid out over here. So you can see we also have a footer which will be present in every page. We can then click on projects, and here is where you display all your personal projects. Obviously, these are just fake projects, but you can change it to whatever you want. And you can add how many projects you want as well. But if you click on one of the projects, you'll see it will open an individual page for that specific project where it will include the skills in which you used to create this project. It will include the picture. You can put links over here, for example, a link to the GitHub repository or a link to a live demo of it. But as you can see, each page, when you click on it, it will open a specific page for that specific project. Then we have the experience tab, which shows all the different experiences and education you had. You can change this depending on what like makes more sense for you. You can add certifications here, whatever you want. But as you can see, we can add some high school information, university, jobs, whatever you want. And you can add how many you want as well. I really like this kind of format, which is kind of like a vertical timeline. I've used it in the past in a portfolio, which helped me get a job. So that's something that I know it's overused, but it's also really cool. That's basically it for the website, right? It's not that overcomplicated, but it teaches you a lot about how to build simple projects and simple websites in React. Now, all of this will also be responsive. Although I won't be doing the CSS, I made sure it is responsive because you shouldn't be doing websites that are not responsive. If you click over here, you'll see I'm on an iPhone, and this is kind of how it looks in an iPhone. It might not look perfect, but it does look responsive. You see there's now the navbar disappeared, and now there's a button. If I click on it, I can move pages, right? The links appear over here. So let me go, for example, to the projects page, and now the projects are all perfectly displayed. If I go to the let me see the experience page, you'll see all the experience will be displayed as well. So you can see the website is fully responsive, and which means that it will work in every kind of device. We're also going to be deploying this application at the end of this video, so stick around to see that because we're going to see this application completely live, and you will be able to do the exact same thing if you're interested. So with that in mind, let's get into the tutorial. Okay everyone, so the first thing we really want to do is actually set up all the hosting for this project because like I mentioned, we're going to be deploying all of this at the end. And if you want to have a portfolio, you really want people to see it. So you want a version of it being displayed live on the internet, probably with some sort of domain. So you would want to use a hosting platform to do this. And the platform that I'm going to be using in this video is one of my favorite ones. It is Hostinger. And the reason why I really like Hostinger is because, first of all, it is not expensive at all. They also, with one of their plans, they actually give you a completely free domain, which if you don't know, you have to pay for domains usually, but you can get one completely for free here. So if you want to deploy this website with your, I don't know, your name and then a .com at the end, you can just get that for free if it is available by using the platform. Also, the whole process is really easy. So after you deploy this first version of your website and you want to make any changes, it will be very easy for you to update it. I'll show you guys exactly how you do that at the end of the video, but the whole process is very simple and fast. They have like 24-hour support. So I've had issues in the past while deploying projects. And if I was in a situation where I really needed some sort of immediate response on how to solve some sort of issue, it would have been nice if I had this 24-hour support, which is something that Hostinger has. So I feel like it's valuable to always take that into account. Finally, if you actually want to get your money back, they'll give it completely for free. You can see over here it says 30-day money back guarantee. So if you have any issues and you want to stop using the service, you can just get your money back and that should be all fine. So I'm going to start out by showing you guys how to set up your account on Hostinger and how to start the deployment service. Obviously, we're not going to deploy until the end of the video because we don't have the code yet. But if you come down here, you'll see that they have 3 different plans, right? This amount over here is all in USD for me. So take that into account. You'll see they have like insane amounts of discounts right now. And if you use the link in my description and you use my discount code, you will get 7% off on top of all of the discounts that are already here. So the one I'm going to choose is the premium shared hosting because as you can see, it provides me with a completely free domain. And domains, like I said, they are expensive. Sometimes you have to pay way more than this per month. Most times actually way more than this per month just to have it. So by getting it for free, you're definitely getting your money back. So I'm going to select this over here and you can choose how you're going to pay it. Obviously, if you pay for 2 years in advance, it's going to be way cheaper. So I would definitely choose this one because if you're creating a portfolio, you probably want it for a long time. Even if you want to make changes to your portfolio, you can maintain the domain and maintain the hosting in the same platform. So I would choose this one over here. Then you would create your account by either putting an email or signing up with any of these accounts over here. You would obviously have to choose whichever way you want to pay for this. They accept so many different ways, as you can see over here. And then one important thing is you see we're already getting like an insane discount. Its original price would be $575 for 2 years, which honestly, with all of the features that are added up, this kind of makes sense for a hosting platform. But with all of the discounts, especially because you're paying all in advance and you get a 75% discount, it only comes out to $143, which is pretty cheap for 2 years of hosting and also a domain. You can also add my coupon code over here by just saying PedroTech, and this will go on top of that. So you'll see it will become even cheaper, which is amazing. And it will also help support the channel if you use the discount code, so it would be pretty nice. Then you'll just put all of your information over here related to your credit card. I won't do that. I already done that. I already have stuff set up over here. And when you're finished, you'll just click on Submit Secure Payment. And after you set all of that up, I'll see you guys on the dashboard. Okay, so as you can see, this is how your dashboard should look. And if you set up the premium hosting account, like I mentioned, the premium shared hosting, you can actually claim a free domain, a completely free domain, which is exactly what we're going to be doing. So if I wanted, for example, to, and you can choose which kind of extension, which is pretty nice because some of the extensions are kind of expensive. So by being able to choose it, and all of it being free, it's pretty nice. For example, if I wanted to choose something like, I don't know, PedroTechnologies.com, we could just click on check availability. And if it is available, which it isn't, you would just have to choose something else. You can obviously just change this over here. You'll see that .NET should be available, as you can see. And it is completely free, right? So if I were to choose this one, I would just click on claim domain like this, and you'll see that it will start claiming my domain. You can just choose whatever country you want to set this up, right? Or your primary details. I'm going to put Canada because it is where I'm from. Then I'm going to choose personal, click on next step, and it will start asking for a bunch of information. I'm just going to put here my name, my last name, Then you just choose over here, where is your state? I'm going to fill all of this up, but you put all the information related to you. And when you're finished, just click on finish registration. As you can see, it is saying that PedroTechnologies.net is being registered. And when this is finished, we should, yeah, it says you're almost there. My information is under review. And for now, it should be fine. We claimed our domain, but it is pending verification. To actually verify this, we'll get a verification email, and you just have to follow the instructions there so that you actually set up your domain fully. So now that we have our domain claimed, we can actually start, you see it appears over here, and we can actually start writing the code for the project. So let's start doing that. Okay everyone, so let's get into the tutorial. So we opened up over here a little project. It is a completely empty folder inside of VS Code, and we're going to start it directly from here. So what we want to do first is we want to open up our terminal, and I want to run the command yarn create React app to generate a React application. But if you are using npm, the command is npx create React app. So I'm going to press enter over here, and it's going to start generating my React application. When it's done, I'll come back. Okay, as you can see, it finished generating our application. And before we start digging into the code, I want to install some of the packages we're going to be using inside of this project. So in order to add the packages, I'm just going to write yarn add, and then here are the following libraries that we're going to be using. So first of all, we're going to be using Material UI for icons inside of our application. So those icons like the GitHub icon, the email icon, whatever icon we need, we're going to be using Material UI. It's just the simplest way in my view. Then we're going to be using React Router DOM, as you can see over here. React Router DOM, for those who knows, it's basically a library which allows you to have routes in your application. And it's really important. It's what makes us be able to navigate our website. And finally, we're going to be using React Vertical Timeline Component. This is the one that allows us to very easily implement that little timeline of experience that we had in the experience page. And it's going to be really helpful for our project. So now that it installed everything, I'm going to run yarn start, and it should generate or start our application over here. So as you can see, now we are inside of our new React project. It's empty, but we're gonna start out by deleting some of the initial files that come with the project. So first of all, I'm gonna delete the logo, the index.css, and the test files. So this one's over here. The reason why I'm deleting them is because they are unnecessary, at least for the project that we're going to be building, and it just makes our code, our project look a little bit cleaner or easier to look at. So that's the reason why I'm doing that. I'm also going to delete all of this stuff because we want to start directly from scratch. You can see that it is empty right now, meaning that it is how our website looks right now. So we have our app component over here, and I like to use the app component as a component that will help us generate and define our routes. So in order to define routes inside of a React application, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the React Router DOM library, like I mentioned. And in order to use it, we're going to just come over here and say we want to import from React Router DOM, and we want to import a couple of stuff. First, we're going to import the browser router component, and we're going to call it just router, so it's easier. Then we're also going to import the routes component over here. And the route component. I know they all kind of sound the same, but they're very different. If you want an in-depth explanation of what each of them does individually, I have a full tutorial on React Router DOM version 6, which is the most updated version. So I would definitely recommend checking that out because I'm just going to be using it in this video. I won't be going too much in depth. But as you can see over here, in order to define our routes, we're going to just use the router component. Then we're going to define the routes component over here. And finally, in order to define each of the routes, we can just use something like this. A single route component, we add a path, which is just the URL we want to, or the path that we want to use in order to render this component. And then we pass an element tag over here, and we pass the specific component that should be rendered if we go to this path. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, basically, we're going to have different pages in our application. And to define the new page, we have to define it this way. For example, we're going to have our home page. We're going to have our projects page. So in order to go to the projects page, we probably want to go to the projects route. And we're going to probably try to render a component called projects or something like this. And if we want to go to the experience page, which is the other page we have, we're going to need to go to the experience route. And we're probably going to render some component called experience. Now, obviously, we don't have these three components yet, right? So basically what's happening right now is it's not doing anything. If we go over here, it will just say that it doesn't work because those components don't exist. But in order to make this work, we're just going to create a little folder inside of our application. We'll call it pages. And inside of here is where we're going to create all the different components that are going to represent a specific page. So for example, we're going to create the home component. We're going to create the projects component. And we're going to create the experience component like this. Now, each of these files will basically just contain a simple React component like this. And I'm using a snippet to generate this. It is I've mentioned it in a couple of videos. Basically, it is this snippet over here, the ES7 plus React Redux, all of this stuff. If you want to download the snippet, just go and download. Basically, all it does is whenever I write RFCE, it will generate a simple functional component for me with the name of the file. So we've generated a component for each of this specific pages, right? And since we are importing them over here, or we're calling them over here, we also need to import them individually. So to import the home component from the home file, what we have to do is we'll just say import home from /pages/home, and we'll do the exact same thing for all of the other components. We only have three, so I'm just going to say projects over here, and I'm going to say experience over here, and we're going to obviously have to change this to projects and this to experience. Now we're going to save this, and you'll see that it doesn't, it's not actually erroring anymore. It's actually just showing whichever component you're in. So we are in the empty slash, which means we're in the home page. But if I go to the projects page, it should say projects, because this is what we rendered over here in the projects component. It's just a div saying projects. Same thing happens if we go to the experience page, right? It will just say experience. So we just checked and saw that it is working. So what exactly do we want to do now? Well, we'll start out by building our navbar. The reason why we're going to do this is because in every page there should be a little navbar on the top over here and a footer right at the bottom. So we're going to start out by making that. So let's start by creating a folder over here in our project called something like components. I'm also going to zoom in a little bit so it becomes clearer for you guys. The reason why we created a different folder called components is because pages should only include files that define a single page. Now components will be just different components that we might reuse in our application that isn't a page. So for example, a navbar will be an individual component that is not a page. It's just something that exists inside of a page, right? So I'm going to create this navbar component and I'm going to run RFCE. So we generated over here our navbar, and what we want to do is we want to start out by defining the structure of our navbar. So our navbar will be just a single like stretch, right? A single div, which is kind of a rectangle. So we're going to set a class name to this div of navbar. I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I won't be showing me writing CSS. However, if you're interested in using the CSS styles that I create, you'll have to use the same class names as I am, because the files will be using those class names. So if you're interested, just check it out. Then what I want to do is I want to create another div inside of here, and this div will be basically for the button that appears when your screen is smaller. So this is how we're going to actually implement this. So I'm going to call this toggle button like this. And inside of here, I'm just going to add a little button, which for now, like it won't, for now, let's not even add anything inside of here. Let's just create the button. But this is the button that you're going to use to click to expand the navbar whenever it is like you're in a smaller screen. Then what I want to do is I want to create another div down over here, and this div will be the div that contains the links. So I'm going to put class name over here, and this class name will be links. Then over inside of this div, we want to define each link that will exist in our navbar. Now, in order to create a link, you could obviously use the A tag, which is common in HTML, but in React Router DOM, we actually have another tag called the link component. And the link component, you import it directly from React Router DOM. Now, this link component is really important because this is how you should actually create links inside of your application if you're using React Router DOM. You just call the component over here like this. You put the text inside of it. So for example, the link will go to the home page. So I'm just gonna write home. And then you pass a prop to it called to, and whatever string you put over here is the actual path that you want this link to link towards, right? So the home link should go to the home page, and the projects link, if we do it like this, should go to the projects route, and the experience link should go to the experience route. So we're just going to say experience like this. Now, obviously the navbar doesn't look like anything now, but let's actually import it really quick inside of our app.js. Now, the reason why we are going to import this navbar over here and not inside of a specific page is because the navbar will exist inside of every single component. So what we're doing over here is we have 3 pages, right? But the only thing that should be changing in our screen is everything in between the navbar and the footer, right? The navbar is the top of your website, and it should maintain the same no matter what page you're in. And the footer should be the bottom of the website, and it should be the same no matter the page you're in. So we actually put the navbar on top of all of the routes. But we don't put it inside of the routes thing because this routes component basically just means that all you should put inside of here are actual routes. We actually put this in between the routes and the router. And we'll just say navbar over here. The reason why we do this is because now the navbar component is inside of a routed project, meaning it can use stuff from React Router DOM, like for example, the link component. But at the same time, it is not a route. It is just a component that exists in every single page, and whatever is below it is the thing that is changing. So if we actually take a look over here, we'll see that now our website, I know it kind of looks empty, but it basically has a very simple navbar, and it is changing. Everything below it is changing depending on the routes. So if I go to the projects route, it will change the project to projects over here. If I go to the experience one, it will say experience, and I can just keep tagging along and the links will work perfectly. Now, in order to actually continue implementing our navbar, I want to add some CSS because in order for you guys to understand what we're going to do next, you have to kind of have a visual representation of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to implement over here a folder inside of our project called styles. And this folder will contain the individual CSS files for each component that we want to add styles to. So for example, we want styles in our navbar, so I'm just going to create a navbar.css component. And inside of here, I'll add all of the CSS related to our navbar component. Now, how do you import this CSS file inside of this component? Well, you just say import and put the path towards the CSS file. So I'm going to say styles/navbar.css. And like I mentioned, I won't be showing the CSS, so I'm going to copy the CSS that I already wrote and I'm going to paste it and just show it to you guys. Okay, everyone. So as you can see, I just pasted the CSS. Again, if you want to check it out, just take a look at the code in the description. But if we come over here, you can see that it looks really nice, right? It looks exactly how I showed you guys in the beginning. Now, I also added another thing, which is a style to our app.css file. I deleted everything that was already here, and I just added this small thing over here. This will just remove any margin and padding inside of your application. So I would recommend you doing this in every project you actually start building. Now, we have this thing over here, and the reason why I wanted to show you this is because what I want to do is I want to be able to change my screen size like this and go, for example, to like open this website inside of a iPhone or something like that, and be able to see everything looking perfectly. Now the styles that I added from CSS, a CSS point of view, it's kind of doing that. It will, as you can see over here, it will basically change, like make the links disappear if it becomes too small for them to exist. Because if we kept going and the links continued here, they would get cluttered and it wouldn't make a lot of sense. So with responsive websites, you should have a plan depending on the screen size, right? So what I want to do now is I want to implement some React logic that will make it so that whenever we get to a smaller size, for example, we get when the links disappear, I want a little button to appear over here where when you click on it, it will actually open the Navbar in a vertical way instead of horizontally. The reason why we do this is so that mobile users can actually use your website, and I would recommend, because a lot of actual people look at your portfolio in their phones, so I would make the website responsive for sure. Now, the way we're going to implement this is, first of all, I want to create the button which we're going to be able to click. So I'm going to be using an icon from Material UI, which will represent the little icon you saw in the beginning of the video for the button. Now, that icon is called a reorder icon, and I'm just going to import a component over here called reorder icon from at Material UI icons / reorder, like this. And when we import this, I'm just gonna copy this and I'm just gonna use it as a component inside of this button. So this is it's this simple, the way you can actually import these icons using Material UI. If you want to use another library, feel free to do so too. But what this means is that now if we go below the width necessary for the links to disappear, a button should appear, right? And obviously, the CSS that I added is doing all this work for it to disappear depending on the screen size. However, it doesn't mean that we don't have to write React logic, because we do, in order for whenever you click this button to open up the Navbar. So what we want to do is we want to create a state in our application which is going to determine whether or not we expanded the navbar or not. So I'm going to say expand navbar is the name of the state, and a function to change the value of the state will be called set expand navbar. And this will be a boolean. We're going to say use state like this, and inside of here we're just going to initialize it as false. But what we want to do is whenever we click on this button, we'll just say on click, we want to basically just toggle between the values of true or false. So we're going to create a little function inside of this that whenever you click the button, all it's going to do is it's going to set the expand navbar state to be whatever its previous value was not. So we can just say not prev, and it will basically, if it was true, it will become false. If it was false, it will become true. If you're not familiar with states, I would recommend taking a look at it. I do have videos on the use state hook. It is extremely important, and we're going to be using not that much inside of this video, but I would still recommend taking a look at it because it is extremely basic and really important for React. So basically, now that we set this over here, we can use this state to determine if the navbar has expanded or not. Now, we want to do all of that logic in the CSS, and I actually already did. We actually have two elements inside of our CSS, inside of our style over here. We have one called open and we have one called close. Now, we want the element over here, the actual navbar, to have an ID of open if the expanded navbar is on or is true, and we want it to be closed if the expand navbar is false. So what this means is we can just come over here and say if expand navbar is true, then the ID for the navbar div will be open. If not, it will be close. Now we can just do magic with our CSS over here, or just if you can take a look at the file and see what I'm doing. But basically what this means is whenever we come over here and it becomes small enough for the button to appear, now if we click on it, basically the ID for this navbar, if I even open this over here, it's open, but if I click on it again, it will become closed. You can see it's changing the ID inside of our HTML depending on the state of our application. And we're doing all of this using the useState hook. So now our navbar, it's basically done. One thing I want to point out is the fact that if I actually open this up and I go to the mobile view, you can see that if I go to another page like projects, I am in the projects page now, but it still maintains open. Right? You're navigating, but it's not closing depending on which page you're in. What we want is whenever you switch a page or you go to another route, we want this little thing to close, right? Immediately. So a simple way we can do this is take use of the React DOM location API. And this is really simple, but also a bit complicated if you don't understand React DOM a lot. Basically, just know that there's a hook in React DOM called useLocation. And inside of here, we can just grab the location by saying const location equal to useLocation. Now, this location state or variable over here is just a variable that can be used to get information related to where in your website you're in, right? Which route you're in. So what we want to do is we want to create a use effect, which is basically just a function which can run infinite amount of times, but we only want this function to run if this location variable changes, right? And the reason why we want to do this is because if the location changes, we'll set the expanded navbar to false. So by putting the location variable inside of this array over here, inside of the use effect, we're just saying run this use effect whenever the location changes, and whenever the location changes, set the expand navbar variable to false, which means it will close the navbar. So if we look over here, if we try that again, we are in the home page and I go to the projects page. Now you see that the location changed. So this was called again, and the expand navbar state was set to false. If this logic is complicated, don't worry, you don't even need to implement this. I just think it is a really nice thing to have in your website because it is good for user experience, but it will teach you a little bit about use effect and about how hooks works. Again, if you want to learn more about this, just do some research about the use effect and all of that kind of stuff, because it is extremely important in every React application. Now, what we want to do is we want to implement a footer to our project. Now, the footer, I won't spend a lot of time in it because it is not that important, but it is basically a component that will exist kind of at the bottom of your website, and it will serve the same purpose of a navbar, but it isn't meant for navigation. It's just meant to be there, right? So for the footer, we're going to import over here, just like the navbar. We're going to say import footer, and we're going to put it right below the routes. So right over here. And the footer, all it's going to include is a couple links to like your Instagram, your Twitter, your Facebook, whatever, like your GitHub, whatever links you want to put over there. And also a little tag saying that this website is owned by you. So to do this, what I want to do is I'm just going to obviously add some class names to the div because it is needed for the CSS. Then I'm going to use another div over here, which will include all of the different icons we want to include. And finally, I'm going to add a p tag, which I'm going to use a Unicode symbol by implementing this copy like Unicode over here. Basically, it will generate the little @ which appears usually in footers and websites. And then I'm going to put the date today, and I'm going to put something like your website URL. This is very common in every website, and it's usually done like this. Then over here, we just want to put some icons that are going to link to our social medias, right? So for example, these are a couple icons that you might want to use. So in order to use them, I would just put them like this and do and they will should appear in the screen. Now, obviously, you might not want to use or show your Instagram, your Twitter. Just show whatever you want. You don't have to show something you don't. I would recommend also putting some sort of email over here, as many links as possible to where it shows you've done your work or where they can contact you in order to talk about some sort of job or some sort of position. I put all 4 of those, but you don't have to, right? We also want to create a CSS file for this. Like I mentioned, I already have the file for this. So I'm just going to copy and paste, but I'm going to put over here, I'm going to import the CSS file inside of this component. I'm going to go twice back, and then I'm going to go styles/footer.css. I'm going to paste the CSS, and I'll come back in a second. Okay, so as you can see, I just pasted the CSS over here. We're also going to add a class name to this div, which is going to be the social media class name. And now if we come over here, you should see that this is how our footer looks, right? Obviously, it's not at the bottom of the website because there's nothing in the middle, but our footer looks kind of okay, right? It has all the links and they look pretty nice. We also have this little thing at the bottom, which is what I was talking about, and I kind of like it. It just shows which website domain you own and which year it is. Now we want to start writing the code for our actual pages. So I'm going to come over here and we're going to start with our home page because it makes sense. It is the home page. It is what we want to start with. So in our home page over here, I want to go step by step, but I'm going to be adding the class names. So in our home page, I will start out by just adding our class name over here for our div, and the class name will be home. Then we're going to create a div over here, which is going to be a div for kind of the about section, which is that little your name, a little sentence about you, and your social media information that I had in the demo. And this will have a class name of about. However, right at the bottom, we're going to have a div called the skills div. We're going to add the skills that you have in the field right over here. So now that we have the structure for how our homepage will look, let's start writing everything that will go inside of this. So first of all, in our about page or about section, we're going to add an h2 tag, which will just say something like, hi, my name is Pedro, or you put whatever your name is. I'm also going to capitalize some of the letters, but basically, this is the little text that appears right at the center of the screen. Then we're going to add a div, which is going to be kind of like the information, or I'm going to call it the prompt. It's just like a sentence about you, right? Like, I'm a software engineer who loves coding, or whatever you want to write over there. So I'm just going to put over here a p tag, which is going to say a software developer with a passion for learning and creating, something like this. Then what I want to add is a couple links inside of our project, because what I want to do is I want to have the icons for example, the LinkedIn, the email, and some other social media icon. So the main icons we want to have is actually LinkedIn, email, and GitHub. So I'm going to import each one of them over here inside of our component. As you can see, I just imported all of them, and I'm going to be using each one of them inside of here. I'm going to say the LinkedIn icon, the email icon, and the GitHub icon, like this. Email icon and the GitHub icon. Now I'm going to save this, and they should be in our screen. If we take a look, we aren't seeing anything. And the reason for this is because we're actually not in the home page. But let's go to the home page, and you should see that this is how it looks. Now, obviously, the CSS hasn't been added yet, but let's start writing the skills section of our home page first. And then we're going to add the CSS, and you'll see how it will look. Now, for the skills, what I want to do is I want to come over here, and I want to add a little h1 tag that is going to say skills, like this. And then we're just going to add in a couple, like an ordered list right over here, which is going to represent each skill that we want to display, right? So I'm going to add a class name to this list. It's going to be called something like list, and then we're going to add an item, so li, and it's going to have a class name of item. And then I'm going to save this, and inside of here we're going to add an h2 tag, which is going to be kind of our, like, each section of skills we want to display. So first we're going to say front end, and we'll put over here a span, which is going to display all of the front end skills we have. And then we're going to, if we want to add a backend one, we'll just copy all of this and just change this to backend, and just put all of the backend skills inside of the span. We'll do a final one, which is going to be all the languages we know. So like programming languages, I mean. So I'm just going to put over here languages, and we can put all the languages inside of the span. Now, obviously, you can put whatever you want over here. I'm just going to copy paste a bunch of random stuff, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, as you can see, I just pasted a bunch of random skills that you might want to know for front end, a bunch of skills you might want to know for backend, and a bunch of skills you might want to know for, not skills, just languages, right? But fill this in with whatever you know. It also doesn't have to be front end, backend, and languages. If you are just a front end, just put front end information. If you're just backend, just put backend information. And don't worry, just be truthful in this part. Put whatever you know, and it should be fine. So now you'll see that if we come over here, you can see this is how the structure of our page kind of looks like. With the CSS, it will look very different, but even like this, it's already kind of cool. You can see all the skills you have, you can see a little introduction, and it looks pretty good. Now I'm going to add the CSS to this by creating the file for this page. So I'm just going to say home.css, and we're going to import this file over here by saying import /styles/home.css. Now I'm going to paste all the CSS, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, as you can see, I just pasted all of the CSS. I'll close this, and now let's come over here, and you'll see that the homepage looks a lot different. The CSS definitely gives a better touch to it. It has all of the styling, all of the colors, everything, and it looks pretty good. Now you can edit the CSS to however you want. It doesn't have to look like this, but feel free to use the same styles as I am as well. Now, we basically just finished our homepage, but the homepage actually isn't the hardest page we are going to create inside of this project. The hardest page, in my opinion, is probably going to be either the experience or the projects page. Now, I'm going to actually leave the projects for last, and the reason for that is because it is a little bit, it takes a little bit more time. So I'm going to go directly to experience, where we actually have that little timeline displaying the experience we have in our work experience and educational experience. So let's do that right now. So in our experience page, what we want to do is we actually want to display the little vertical timeline, and we've already installed the vertical timeline library. So all we have to do is we're going to create or come to our experience file inside of our project. We're just going to import over here at the top the vertical timeline component from React vertical timeline component. The name of the library is kind of funny, but basically we're going to import this component, and we'll also need to import another component called vertical timeline element. Now, it's super easy to use this library. They do everything for you, even the CSS. But if you want to use their CSS, you actually need to import their CSS file inside of here. So I'm going to say import React vertical timeline component like this, React vertical timeline component / and then we put style.min.css. This is how we're going to import their CSS file. Now, if we want to use the components, all we have to do is we're going to grab this component over here. We're going to go down inside of our file, and we're just going to add a vertical timeline inside of our application. Now I'm going to add a class name to this, which is going to be experience. just so the CSS that we write matches what the page should look like. And when we create this vertical timeline, you'll see that nothing is displayed in our screen because we don't have elements in it yet. But if we add an element by coming over here and saying vertical timeline element, you'll see that now it should be displaying something. And it does, but it looks completely white because we haven't added any styling or anything related to that. So let's start doing that. First of all, I'm going to set the line color of this timeline to be the color that we've been using throughout this application. It is this dark blue that we have over here. Now, I remember the actual hexadecimal, so I'm just going to write over here, but try to make it match whatever colors you're using. This is the color that I want because it matches my website. Then what we want to do is we want to add a couple class names or a couple styling stuff to this element, and subsequently the other elements we also have. The actual class name I'm going to be using is a class name that is used for already in the CSS file that they created. So this class name is vertical timeline element _education. So this means that if you're going to use something from them, use the same class name as this one over here, and the styling should be applied. Then we want to set a date, and a date in this component is just a date between like of when this thing happened, right? So for example, if this is for example, my first high school, I can just put that it was between 2010 to 2014. Mine actually wasn't. I'm not that old, but let's just pretend it is. This is the date where the person for this website went to high school. Then we also want to put an icon style. And an icon style is just a little circle, and we can determine some CSS styles over here that will match that actual circle. So I'm going to add a background, and the background, I'm going to add the same color as I added over here. As you can see over here, we can also add a color tag over here for the text, and it will just be 3 Fs, and you can see that this is how the style now looks, right? It's looking pretty okay in my opinion. Then we want to add an icon to this timeline. So the icon will be what is displayed inside of the circle. So this is a school. Let's say that this element will be a school, right? Because we put education over here. So it is my high school experience. This is what I'm trying to show the employers. So there's actually a school icon from Material UI. So I'm going to say from at Material UI icons like this /school. And if I put this over here and call this component, you'll see that this is what we see. We see a little school icon over here. Now, obviously, it's black and we want it's not visible, but don't worry about the CSS. As we go, it will start getting better. Now, what we want to do is we want to add all the stuff that goes over here, right? We just have the date, but we want to get information about the school and like which school you went, where it was, all the kind of stuff. So what we do is inside of this 2 tags over here, we actually design how it will look. So for example, for the high school name and where it was, I can say something like my random high school and put the actual place, right? So it was at a random place at a random state, but obviously put your correct information over here. We're also going to add a class name to this, which is going to match a class name from the library. This class name will be vertical timeline element title, like this. And just keep in mind that you should be using this if you're using the same styles as the library. Then what I want to do is I want to add a p tag over here and say that this was I got a high school diploma out of this. So this p tag over here will kind of be where we specify what kind of degree or what we got out of this experience. So now if I save this, you'll see that it shows over here that this is how this was my experience. Now, before we move any further, I want to just add the CSS real quick before we actually continue, which is a bit different from what I've been doing with the other components, because I feel like this one is very visual. So being able to see everything already done as we go is pretty nice. So I'm going to create a experience CSS file inside of our styles, experience.css. And we're going to import it over here at the top as well. Now, one thing I really want to do right now is just add some styling to the background of this, which I forgot to add in the beginning. This style will actually go inside of our app.css. It's just styling that I've done and I forgot to add, but basically this is how our app.css should look like. I changed a little bit the background. So you can see it looks a little bit better, especially contrasting with the white out of this box, but it just makes it look a little bit better. Even at the home page, I feel like it does give a better look to it. So sorry I didn't add this in the beginning, but I'm just adding it right now, and I feel like it looks good. Another thing I wanted to point out is the fact that there's animations inside of this component. Whenever we move to the Experience tab, you see the thing has a little animation, which is pretty cool in my opinion. Also, I realized that I actually forgot to add an R to this color thing over here. That's why the icon is not being white, but that's how it should look. I apologize for that, but it's just a mistype. This should be saying color. But the important thing is that now you can see how we're generating each part of the timeline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all of the other parts of this timeline, and I'll be back in a second because it will be just me repeating everything, and you really don't want to see that. Do this part on your own. Try to add everything that is related to your timeline so that it looks more like yours. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, everyone, I just pasted everything, and this is how the website actually looks. So we'll see we have 2 school educations. That's what I decided to add. One for high school, one for university, and then one first job experience and one the job experience until the present. Ignore all of the information I put over here. It's obviously not accurate. I'm just putting random information, but put it correctly in your case. So some of the changes I made was I just copy and pasted a new vertical timeline element for each of the new new events that I wanted to add. Now you see a couple of them are different because I like to differentiate the education ones from the work ones. So what I did to differentiate is for the work ones, which starts over here, I just changed the color of the background to another color. This color is different from the blue one. This is the yellow. And I also added a work icon instead of the school icon. And to import the work icon, I just grabbed it directly from Material UI, just like this. And we have our experience thing looking perfect. So that's pretty good. Now we kind of have this page almost done. Actually, it's completely done. We only have to do the projects page inside of our application. But this is the most complicated, technically, the most time-consuming page because it is more than one page, right? We're going to display all the different projects we have inside that we've created, and we want to be able to click on the projects and go to an individual page that shows information just about that project. So let's do that right now. So in order to create our projects page over here, we're going to come inside of our projects file, and what we want to do is we want to first of all create this div and give it a class name of projects like this. Then we're gonna have a project's title if we want to. It's gonna be an h1 tag saying my personal projects, something like this. Then I want to have a div which is going to be a div where we display all of our projects, right? I'm going to give it a class name of project list. And one thing I want to point out is that each project will be very similar, right? It will be kind of like a square with a picture and the name of the project. So what we can do is we can actually create a component called project item or project item, which is going to be a component representing a project. Each project will be almost exactly the same, so we can do something like this so that we don't keep rewriting code. So a project item will basically just be a div with a class name that we can just edit right here. The class name will be project item, and inside of this div, what we can add is another div, which this div will basically include the background image for our project. And we'll also have an h1 tag with the name of the project. Now, how are we going to get that information from different projects and display them differently but having the same component? Well, we're going to be passing props. So we're going to have each project item should keep in mind two things: an image and the name of the project, right? And those two things will be useful. The name, we'll just display it over here. Now the image, if we want to display the image as kind of like the background image to a div like we had in the demo, I'll have to give a style over here and just put background image, and we'll just pass over here a URL, and the URL to the image is just basically we'll put the template like this and just basically pass the image inside of here. We'll also add a class name to this, which will be used for my styling, but the class name will be bg image like this, just this name, so that I can access it in the CSS. Now this looks okay, but in order to actually see this working, we would have to come over here and try to create some project items. So I'm going to create a couple like this. I'm going to create two just for now, just so you guys can see. We're reusing all of this code by just calling this component right over here. Now we have to pass the props, right? And we also have to import this component. So I'm going to say import project item, and it will automatically import for me. But also I want to import some sort of image that we're going to pass inside of this prop over here. Because if you recall, this project item component should have a name, which for now, let's just pass a name, a fake name like social media website. And it should have a picture, right? The image like this. And the thing is, we don't have an image yet. So I'm going to create a folder over here inside of the source folder called assets. And this is a folder that is going to be used inside of our project for adding stuff like images, videos, files, anything that is an asset to the project. It's not actual files or pieces of code. It's just visual stuff or stuff that can be deemed an asset. So I have a couple pictures. I have 6 pictures of like fake projects that I'm going to be putting, but here's where you put the pictures to your specific project. So I'm going to put all the pictures for mine inside of here, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, I just pasted all of the images. Also keep in mind that some of them have different extensions. This is why I did it this way. They have different extensions, which is something you should take into account whenever you import images, right? But you can see that the images are just like images of fake projects that I will be using inside of my application. So I'm going to close this over here, and I'm going to show you guys how to import an image in React. So if I want to import, for example, this first one over here, which is proj1 .jpg, I'll just come over here and say proj1 or whatever name you want to call it, and say from, and you put the path towards that image. So I'm going to go to the assets folder and then go to proj1.jpg. Now I can add this inside of the image tag over here, and it should be working. I'll do the exact same thing for another project item, and let's test it out. I'll call this something like Spotify clone, and I'll add the Spotify clone picture that I actually got from the internet. So this one over here, it's proj3.webp. So I'm going to import that picture, and we'll just pass it over here like this. Now if I save this and I put proj3 over here, you'll see that it doesn't actually work. The reason why it doesn't actually work is because in order to display this image over here, I actually need to add some important CSS. So I'm going to be adding, similar to the experience component, I'm going to be adding the CSS in the beginning so that we can keep seeing the changes as it goes. But keep in mind that if you want to check out the CSS, just go in the description. So I'm going to come here, paste the CSS, and be back in a second. Okay, so I just pasted the CSS, and we have to import the CSS file over here by saying import, and we go to the styles folder /projects .css. Now, one thing I want to point out is I added the actual styling. Oh, I call this project.css, not projects. So let me change this and call this projects. But one thing I want to point out is I put the styling for both this component and the project item component inside of the same CSS file. Now, does that mean that I need to import this one over here as well? No, it doesn't mean that, because what happens is if I import inside of this file over here, the projects, this component is above the project item component because it is calling the project item component. So what this means is that whatever style I import over here can be accessed for every component below this one, including the project item. So I don't need to import it twice. But now that we imported it, we can check it out and you'll see that the styling actually works. The components are being displayed. Now, one thing I want to tell you guys is by adding them individually like this, it's kind of annoying. It is not efficient in a developer sense. In React, we can do much more than this, especially by the way that the React works. So what I like to do is I actually like to create an external file that is going to contain information about each of the projects we want to create, and then just loop through a list and display each project item individually. Now, if that doesn't make sense, you'll see what I mean in a second. This is actually something really cool that I always do in my React projects. So I'm going to create a folder over here and I'm going to call it helpers. Helpers basically just means this is just a file. It's just whatever files I need that is going to help my application in any way. And that isn't a component. I'll just put it over here. So what I want to create is a list of projects. So I'm going to call this project lists, like this, project list.js. And inside of here, all I want to do is I just want to export a project list, which is a list of projects. But the format of this list or this array is going to be of objects, right? So we're going to have our first project over here, and we can structure the project in this following way. We can give a name, for example, like the name for the first project we want to create is just that it is an algorithm visualizer. So I'm just going to put this, and then we can put, for example, an image. And the image would be something like proj1, which is the project that the image of the first project. So I could just put it over here. Now, why are we doing it this way? Because now we can create a list of objects like this, and it will be much easier and much quicker than just copy and pasting each component individually. Now, what I want to do is I want to paste all of the different projects that we're going to have. We're going to have 6 projects, and I'll be back in a second when I finish populating this list. Okay, so as you can see, I finished populating the list. We have 6 projects, each of them with a different picture, and each of them are represented by an object containing 2 pieces of information, a name for the project and an image for the project. What exactly does this mean? It means that now if I come to our projects folder over here and I just import this list by saying import from 2./helpers/project list, and I import the actual array, we can actually, instead of copy and pasting each project item individually, I can just say project list dot map, and a map is a function in JavaScript, which basically it will loop through each element in the list and will just return a project item like this. And how do we pass the correct props? Well, when you map through each element, you can grab the individual elements by passing an argument to this function. And now if I pass the name, for example, if I want to access the name, I can just say project.name. And for the image, I can do the exact same thing. I can say project.image. You'll see that it will continue working, but now it will loop through all the elements and it will display all the images without actually calling the project item or writing the project item more than once. We only write it once and do the array and make the array do all the work. So this is a cool way of doing this. It is honestly the way that I would always do it because it just makes more sense, and we can maintain an organized list of projects by writing the data like this. Now, I also realized I accidentally wrote project list instead of project list. If I save this, the correct CSS styles will be applied and our styling should look like this, which is very similar to what it was looking in the beginning of the video, which is really cool. Now, we're not able to click on each of the items, which is exactly what we want to do. So how would we do something like this? Well, in order to be able to click on each of those items, we obviously have to create a new page that will represent like each individual item, right? Each individual project. So we have 6 projects over here. It doesn't mean that we'll have to manually create 6 different routes. Well, no, because there's a very efficient way of doing this, and I'm going to show you right now. What we can do is we can come over here to our route definition, which is our app.js, and we can actually create a route which is going to have a path of /project instead of projects, but then we can put what is known as a param. This param, we're going to pass the ID as a param, but basically what it says that whenever you access the project route, whatever you put after the slash will dictate what page will be displayed. So we're going to have one component, but that component will show like different pieces of information depending on what we pass in our URL. So this is really common in React and everywhere else, and it's really interesting. So I'm going to actually create a new page over here instead of our pages folder. This page will be called project display. It's just a page for each project being displayed. So I'm going to just create the component and I'm going to pass it right over here like this, project display, and then close this. So what we have right now is we have this component called project display, which depending on what ID we pass over here, it will display something different. But how do we access what ID we pass on the params? Well, in React Router DOM, we have this thing, this hook called the use params hook. So I'm just going to say use param over here. And I'm just going to say const. And then I'm going to open and close curly braces to destructure an object and pass equal to use params. So I can just destructure the ID from the parameter and I can just display it in our screen. Now, you might be confused right now what all of this means, but I had to do this so I could explain to you better. Basically, what happens now is we have this route in our application called projects, and depending on what we put after this the second slash, like whatever number we put over here, or it can be anything, this is what is going to be displayed in our screen, right? We're grabbing this piece of information from our URL by using the use params hook. And the reason why we put ID is because whatever you define as the name over here is what you should put or this structure over here. Now, why do we want an ID for this, right? How is this going to help us, right? Well, because if you recall, each project over here in our file, they are an object inside of an array. So if we know, for example, where in the array this object is, we could technically access the information. So this is exactly what we're going to be doing. I'm going to come over here inside of our div, and I'm just going to say const project equal to project list. So I'm going to import the project list from our helpers like this, import from /helpers /project list. I'm going to import the array with the projects, and depending on the ID, this is where we're going to access our list or our project. So what happens now is if the ID over here is 0, for example, oh, I forgot to save this. If the ID over here is 0, then it should be displaying the first project. If the ID is 1, it should be displaying the first project because this is the position of the project in our project list, right? So what we do now is we start building our component based on this project. So I'm going to give a class name to this div. Obviously, it's going to be called project. Then it's going to maintain very simple. We're just going to have an h1, which is going to display the name of the actual project. Then we're going to have obviously the image of the project with a source, and the source will be equal to the project.image. And we also want to add a couple more stuff. We want to add a GitHub icon. So I'm going to import the GitHub, our GitHub icon from at material UI icons slash GitHub. And I'm just going to display it down here. And we also want to display a couple list of skills that were used while building this project. You can see that right now it is working. We are in project 2, or since arrays work starting from 0, we are in the index 1, which is the second project. But if we go to 0, we'll see the first project. And if we go to 3, we'll see the second project. It is displaying the information based on which ID is over here. Now, what I want to do is I want to be able to display some skills. Obviously, we don't have the skills. We didn't put anything related to skills on each project. So I'm going to add a new field to each of these objects called skills. And it's just going to be a string with all the different skills that were used to create this project. Since I've already done this, I just pasted all of the skills for each of the projects. You can do this however you want, but basically I just added some random skills or technologies or whatever to each of the projects. And now if I want to display it in our screen, I can just come over here and say something like, I'll just add a p tag, and I'll add like I'll write skills, and I'll put project.skills. You'll see that now it should be displaying the skills over here, right? I also want to make the skills, this thing over here, be bold. So I'm going to put a B tag over here, and you'll see that now it looks bold while the skills don't. It's just a nice touch in my opinion. Now, obviously we want to add the CSS to this. So I'm going to create a file called project.display.css, and this file, I'll just paste the CSS and I'll be back in a second. So I pasted the CSS, and in order to make it effective, we need to import this file over here. Like always, I'm just going to import by doing this, project display.css. And now you'll see that this is how the page should look. If we go to the first one, this is how it looks. It has all the skills and everything. It looks pretty good. And it's displaying the correct information. Now, the thing is, it still doesn't work, right? Because we have to manually put the route over here, and we're not clicking on this and going directly to the page. So how would we make it so that when we click on each of this individual items, we go to their specific individual pages? Well, to do that, it's not even that hard. All we have to do is we have to go to our project item component, which is each individual project being displayed in the projects page. And over here, I want to make it so that when you click on this div, you are able to navigate to another page. So if you hear the word navigate, it is important because there's actually a hook in React Router DOM called the use navigate hook. So I'm going to import from React Router DOM the use navigate hook. Now this use navigate hook is really cool because I can just define a function called navigate, set it equal to use navigate. And now this function over here, whenever I call it, for example, I'll put navigate over here, and I pass a string over here with some sort of route. Whenever this is called, it will navigate your page to that route, right? It will act like a redirect, right? So what we want to do, for example, I'm just going to point out as an example, if I want to go to the home page every time I click on this button, obviously this is not what we want, but just to show you guys, whenever I click on one of this, it will bring me to the home page, right? But there's no home page with the /home. That's why it didn't show anything. But you can see it works for each of them because we're applying it directly inside of the project item component, which all of these things over here are made out of. So what I want to do actually is I want to navigate to their specific pages. The way we're going to do this is I'm going to put that I want to navigate towards the project route, the individual project route, and I want to navigate towards their specific IDs. But how do I know which ID we're clicking at? Well, we know because we're looping through each of the projects, right? If we go to the projects component over here, we're looping through a list. So we can grab the index of each, we can call it index over here, like this, from each element, and we can just pass it as props to the project item component, right? We just create a prop called ID and pass the index from the element over here. And now if I just grab ID as a prop, it should be passing the correct one. And when I click on the item, it should navigate me to the correct page. We can test this out by clicking on the first one, and it should navigate me towards project/0, which is exactly what happens. And if I go on the second one, it goes to the correct one. I can keep going, and it will keep going, navigating me to the correct one, because that's how we implemented the actual code. So we can see that our project is basically done, right? We have all of our pages over here, and it looks pretty nice. We have our experience, we have our projects, we can go to each individual project, we can go to our home page, we have our footer, our skills, everything is completely done. So we went over a lot of stuff in this tutorial while writing this code. However, we are not done because we still have to deploy this application. And in order to deploy this application, we're going to be using an amazing service called Hostinger. And this service will allow us to deploy this project in a very easy way. Everyone, now that we're done with the code, let's start the deployment process into deploying this into Hostinger. So as you can see, since the code is completely done, we basically don't have to do anything else. But we do have to run a command over here, which is going to be a command that is going to create a build version of our application. This build version is just all of our code bundled into a single folder, and this folder is the one that we're going to be using to deploy inside of Hostinger. So to create this build version, we can use yarn build if you're using yarn, or if you're using npm, you just run npm run build, right? I'm using yarn, so I'm just gonna run yarn build. And when I press enter, it will start generating a build folder inside of our project. This version will be optimized and it will include all of the stuff related to our project, as you can see over here. So now that we have that, we're going to open up our Hostinger panel by going to hpanel.hostinger.com. And then we're going to click on our domain, right? This one over here. We can click on manage, and then we need to come over here to hosting, where we're going to actually start hosting our project. We're going to click over here on premium shared hosting and click on setup. And it will ask us over here, help us provide a perfect experience by answering a few questions. So we're going to click on start now. It will ask us, who am I creating this project for, or this website for? I'm going to click myself. Then it's going to ask, what kind of project is this? Obviously for us, it is a portfolio, and I'm going to click on that. Then it's going to ask what kind of experience you have. If you're a beginner and this is your first website, click on this. If you have a bit of experience, click on this. But I'm going to click on a professional website creator, or whatever that means. But basically, it will then ask you to select a platform. Since we're building the project from scratch, we're just going to click on skip and say, I will start from scratch. And when we click on this, it will ask us to name our website, and we can choose to use an existing domain that we purchased outside of Hostinger. But like I mentioned, since Hostinger gives us for free, we already set up our domain in the beginning of the video over here. So I'm going to choose that one, and I'm going to click select. Then you'll see that we can choose which server location our project will be deployed in. The location is really important in the sense that obviously the connection will be way better if the person is accessing the website close to this location, but it doesn't really matter after all. Hostinger has a location everywhere around the world, as you can see, and it doesn't mean the person won't be able to access it. It's just faster if they're closer. So I'm going to choose the United States one because this is where I'm closer to. And then I'm going to click on finish setup. Now you can see that our website is technically ready. We can click on view website, but this will basically not do anything because our website hasn't been deployed yet. So technically you'll say our account has been created, but we haven't deployed anything. So we're going to click on manage website, and it's going to bring us to our dashboard over here. And we have a couple things that we have to do in order to deploy our website fully. So we're going to go down over here and we're going to choose the option which is file manager. So this one over here is where we want to put our build folder. So we created the build version of our project, which if we open our project inside of our folder manager over here, we'll see the build folder is right over here. So what we want to do is we're going to click on the public.html thing over here on the left side, and we're going to see that there is a default.php file over here. Obviously, this isn't what we want inside of our website, so we need to delete this. I'm going to click on delete this file. And what we want to do is we want to add all of the files inside of this build folder inside over here. So I'm just going to copy everything from here, and I'm just going to drag and drop inside of the website. You'll see these are all the folders or all the files we want to upload, and I'm just going to click on upload. So when it finishes uploading each file, we should have our website being displayed in our inside of the link, right? So I'll come back in a second when it's all done. You'll see that now it finished putting all the files inside of here, which means that if I refresh over here and I go to the link which we were before and I refresh the page, now it should be showing our website completely deployed, as you can see over here. You can navigate throughout the project and all the images will be displayed. Everything that we created is now deployed online, and you can actually go in this website and see it for yourself. Now it says not secure over here, and the reason why it's not secure is because we haven't set up an SSL certificate. So if we actually look at what this domain is, this domain isn't actually an HTTPS domain. It is an HTTP, as you can see over here. And as you might know, HTTPS is more secure because it has an SSL certificate. So how exactly are we going to put an SSL certificate here? Well, it's super simple with Hostinger. All you have to do is go to SSL over here. And if you purchase the premium hosting account, it will already have bought the certificate, which by the way, many times you have to pay extra to get it. We just click on setup, and then it's going to say install SSL certificate. You select which website you want to install it in. So we chose this one, and you click on install SSL. It will install the certificate inside of your domain. And what that means is that right now it's installing, and when this status finishes saying that it is installing, so when it says it's done, we should be able to see our certificate. Now, if we go over here to our home, we'll see that we have over here this domain and this project over here. So if we go into main domain, we should now be seeing our domain being used correctly instead of the preview domain that we had before. Not only that, but it still says it's not secure, but I'll be back in a second when the SSL finishes just to show you guys that it actually works. And as you can see, it says it is active, meaning that our SSL certificate should be set up. So if I refresh the page, it should now not say it is not secure. It just says that we have a connection that is secure, and it will show our certificate, right? Certificate is valid, meaning that anyone can come inside of this website. And I would definitely recommend making your portfolio have an SSL certificate, because people looking on your website, they really don't want to go into a website that says that it's not secure. So having one will definitely not deter people from going into your portfolio. But as you can see, our project is fully deployed. It looks really nice. We can go and click on everything that we've built and see our portfolio being displayed for everyone. So this is basically it for the video. If you want to check out the code will be all in the description. If you want to check out Hostinger, my link will be in the description as well. I would recommend checking them out. They were really good and they helped produce this video. So I would be really happy if you could help support the channel and check out their awesome platform. So with that in mind, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I see you guys next time.